You're listening to Real Presence Live. Now, back to more inspirational and uplifting stories and a look at the extraordinary things happening in our local area. Heard right here on the RPR Network.
Friends, thank you for staying with us. This is Camille Pauley. I'm the president of Healing the Culture, and you can access our pro-life resources at healingtheculture.org, including a whole bunch of videos, long ones, short ones, and ones as short as 90 seconds to help you answer your questions you have on the pro-life issue or to share with your friends who maybe need some help with that. I have another guest today, and I am really thrilled that you stayed with us because Lydia Taylor Davis is the real live Energizer Bunny. And she is with us today. She served as president of Campbell University Students for Life chapter when she was a student. And she was known as the pro-life girl, still known as the pro-life girl across the state of North Carolina. She's dedicated her life to ending abortion. And she's gained national attention for what she does. She's faced extreme backlash, and I want to hear about that, Lydia, from the pro-abortion movement. In 2023, she participated in a highly anticipated abortion debate, which you probably heard about if you were reading the news. A majority of the pro-choice audience voted that she won. And since then, she's been featured in Fox News, Steve Bannon's War Room, the Whatever podcast, the Wall Street Journal, ABC, Newsmax. In other words, she's kind of a little bit too busy to be with us here today, but I'm glad you made time for us. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
God bless you. Well, I want to talk to you about you just had a fall tour, just wrapped up, and I want you to tell us, how did it go, and were there any moments in that fall tour that stood out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I did just wrap up a few weeks ago. It was the most powerful tour I've ever done. Just before I kicked it off, the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's death happened, and it was devastating. I originally was planning on canceling the tour just for safety because immediately those threats started coming in that Charlie was first, we're coming for you next.
Yes.
Because my tour is exactly what Charlie Kirk was doing. But we prayed about it, and the messages started pouring in of we need these voices, we need Students for Life on these campuses, changing hearts and minds. I became pro-life. We had women reaching out saying they chose life because of these tours.
Yeah.
And so we definitely beefed up our security, and I had to wear a bulletproof vest this semester.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yes.
We've come to that.
Right, yes. Oh, it was definitely intimidating at first, but I'm very glad that we trusted God because, our tour stops this semester were so packed out that at one of the stops at the University of Cincinnati, the students, they flooded the walkway so much with the crowd that was there to hear that the university had to switch our location because they had blocked the entire campus walkway. And so there were just hundreds and then thousands of students that came out to hear this. And of course, there was a lot of backlash. I had Antifa come to my last tour stop where they just flooded my speech and just were screaming. And that was hard, but even more so, despite all of the backlash, we had students coming up to the mic saying that just in 10 minutes of them being there, they had become pro-life. I had girls come up to me
Lydia.
in tears after my speeches saying that they had had abortions and were now pro-life because they were there. So it was just so powerful,
Well,
and
Lydia,
I'm glad to continue.
God bless you for what you do. I think a big part of that conversion today is because people aren't dummies. People aren't stupid.
Right.
And if the only way that you can defend your position or present your position is to scream and make horrible, vulgar sounds in order to drown out your opposition, people kind of figure out that there's something wrong with your position.
Right, exactly. I see that all the time. People become pro-life because of the crazy opposition they see we face. They want to be on our side.
Yeah. So based on what you've heard this fall, what do you think are the trending concerns among college students related to abortion today? What do they care about the most? What do you hear?
Yeah, unfortunately, due to especially the election last year, there were a lot of lies and misleading stories that were put out about women, quote unquote, dying or bleeding out in parking lots because of pro-life laws. And so a lot of the students I talk to, they don't even want to hear when does human life begin. Their concern is they are genuinely convinced that women are dying because of pro-life laws, that women can't get miscarriage treatment, which are total lies, as we know. And so every time they don't even want to talk about the life in the womb because they're so concerned about these women. And so I end up just trying to find common ground in them and saying, hey, we care about these women. Our pro-life laws care about them. And I end up having to read off the pro-life laws. And even then, they still think that I'm lying to them because there's just been this huge indoctrination from the pro-abortion movement, convincing young people that to support abortion is to support health care, which is a lie, but it's something that we're fighting big time right now.
You know, Lydia, here in South Dakota, which is where we're based, we had Amendment G that we had to vote on last November, and it was just a horrible display of the, misaligned so-called ethics of the pro-abortion movement, because the first thing they did to even get it on the ballot was have big posters everywhere that said pro-life, sign here, because they knew that nobody was going to sign this thing if they knew it was in favor of abortion. But once they got that done and got it on the ballot, it was just lie city. What they had to do to try to get any votes at all was their ads were all about how if you don't pass this law, women will die because they can't get treatment when they miscarry. And the bill, the initiative would have made a constitutional amendment to make abortion legal through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason whatsoever. We would have been one of the worst states in the country, coming from being one of the best states in the country on pro-life. So it really makes you wonder, if you have to tell all these lies about you're going to die and you can't have miscarriage, you miscarriage, you're going to die, and that's all that this does. You really have to start to lie awake at night in your bed and wonder, where is my life going? I mean, what is it that the evil that lurks behind what I'm doing that's so attractive to me, and how is my life so disordered that I'm assenting to this? It's frightening. It sounds like you're hearing the same kind of stuff, and this has become a big problem.
Yes, absolutely. But we're still fighting, and we're seeing hearts and minds change despite all of that, and it's been really powerful.
Yeah, I love that. What do you think are the top 2 or 3 questions that you repeatedly hear from people about why they think abortion should be legal, besides that everybody's going to die if you don't?
Yeah, I mean, besides that, I definitely hear, what about women who are sexually assaulted? And the other big one I've heard more and more is, if you end abortion, if you make it illegal, it's just going to happen. There's going to be unsafe abortions. And I have to explain that there's no safe way to have an abortion, and that pro-life laws do effectively raise the birth rate. But no, it's focusing. They like to focus a lot on those rare cases of medical emergencies, rape and incest, or fetal abnormalities, to justify abortion up until birth. And so that's something that I end up spending a lot of time on. And you have to really show compassion first before they actually listen to you, to say, hey, we're talking about a baby here. This is a baby's life. It's not just the woman that's being affected by the abortion. There is a child.
Well, you're very right to point that out first and not let that get lost in the whole debate, because the whole point of pro-choice advocates when they debate like that is to get you to forget that there is another person here, a real human being, and to point that out continually up front is I think really critical. We just put out a Truth in 90-second video on that topic of women are going to die if you make abortion illegal again, and that argument has been so debunked over and over and over again. Even the pro-abortion movement has acknowledged, 30 years ago, acknowledged that all the statistics that showed that, that they were claiming, that stated that 10,000 or thousands of women or tens of thousands of women died every year from back-alley abortions. There was absolutely nothing to substantiate that. There were no studies that substantiated that. It was more like an average of 200 women dying per year in the 20 years or 25 years before abortion was legalized. And then in the year just before abortion was legalized, in 1972, that number had dropped to, I think, 39 women dying from abortion because of the discovery of, penicillin and other antibiotics to treat infections. So this whole idea that everybody's going to die is just based on myths and lies, which is appalling. But I want to hear, how do you answer that question on sexual assault?
Yeah, no, it's hard, because a lot of the times I find that the women asking it are someone that knows someone that has been in that situation, or they themselves have. And so immediately I always emphasize compassion, that I want those rapists to be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law, that I never want a woman to become pregnant from sexual assault. But I always emphasize that abortion is not going to undo that trauma. It may add more trauma to that woman's life. As we know, abortion leads to increased risk of depression, anxiety, and suicide. And it adds a second victim to that trauma, which is the innocent child. And typically, the people I'm debating oppose the death penalty, even for rapists. And so I ask them, if we're not going to give the death penalty to this rapist, how can we give it to the innocent child for the crimes of their father? And most of the time, that at least gets them to stop and think for a second, reevaluate. And then I also love to share the stories of the women I know that have chosen life in that hard circumstance, because a majority of women who do become pregnant in that hard circumstance do choose life, and we're there to support them and empower them, and I talk about those resources. And then I also share the stories of those people I know that were conceived in sexual assault. We just posted a video on Students for Life of Rebecca Kiesling, who was conceived in sexual assault and is a powerful voice for life and is valuable and should not have been killed just because of her father's crimes. And so I'd love to share those stories, and it's so powerful.
Rebecca Kiesling is one of my heroes, just a phenomenal advocate for life. And it's also true that, you can ask people, if the woman gave birth to this child and the child becomes 4 years old, and then the woman starts to have psychological trauma because her rapist, is, he's beginning to resemble the rapist in his appearance. Would you say that trauma that she's experiencing now through this 4-year-old little boy that was resulting from a rape should allow her to have an abortion, should allow her to kill the boy now that he's 4? And most people say, no, you don't kill the child because of the trauma, the psychological trauma of the mother.
Right.
And then you go back to your point, Lydia, which is, okay, so why would you allow it when this baby is, in gestation, when this baby is forming in the womb and is at his most vulnerable? It's really hard for people to answer that question, I think.
Right. Absolutely. No, I agree. And it's been great to see minds change on that point.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to find out from you if you're seeing students more interested in the philosophical arguments, the scientific facts. Do they care about science anymore, right, about human development? Is it the policy implications that they care more about? Kind of where are young people today in the way that they're thinking and what they're more interested in? We'll be right back after this short break.
This is Real Presence Live, where the focus is not on the evil around us, but on conversion and mercy through the good news that is always good. We're local, engaging, and live on the Real Presence Radio Network.
The wisdom of Mother Angelica.
I want you to have such confidence in the Lord that you'll find such hope at seeing the beauty of the Lord, the majesty of God. What did our Lord say, huh? If your sins are as scarlet, oh, what? What's going to happen? They shall be made white as snow.
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
I would say where Catholic radio has played a pretty important role in my faith is I'm a scientist, so I think of everything kind of in knowledge and intellectual terms. So Catholic Answers helped a lot because I might have some questions or there was a lot that I wasn't aware of. And it always seems like the callers' questions were just timed perfectly for whatever I was wondering about or had questions about. So I was able to learn kind of piece by piece and build. And now with kids, I really like to hear Dr. Ray's show with all the little discipline tips because he makes it so simple.
Yeah.
I think for me, the history has been really interesting. I grew up Catholic and we went to Sunday school and religious education, but you can always learn more, and there's just, there's only so much that you can learn. I mean, when you're just going once a week to religious education. So for me, it's just been really interesting to learn, why do we do this, or where did this come from, or, or to be able to answer questions when people have them. I think that's been the biggest help.
Do you ever find yourself missing out on your favorite Real Presence radio shows when you're on the move? Say no more. Just head to your app store and download the Real Presence Radio app. With all stations in the network available anytime, you can stay plugged in to your go-to programs or catch up on local podcasts. Keep your stride steady in your daily walk with Christ with the RPR app by your side. It's your way to stay connected, no matter where life takes you.
You're listening to Real Presence Live. Now, back to more inspirational and uplifting stories and a look at the extraordinary things happening in our local area. Heard right here on the RPR Network.
Welcome back, friends. This is Camille Pauley, your host at Real Presence Live on Real Presence Radio. And we're having a fascinating conversation with an Energizer Bunny Generation Z young person who is with Students for Life of America and just completed a fall tour speaking on college campuses about the issue of abortion, and has been really engaging in some great discussion right now. Lydia Taylor Davis, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Listen, I want to ask you, are you finding that students today are more interested in the theological aspects when you're dialoguing on abortion? Are they more interested in the philosophical concepts, scientific facts? Do they even care about science anymore? Are they more interested in the implications of policy? What do they care about the most?
I will say the most consistent thing I get from them, their consistent stances on the policy, is they'll come up and say, oh, pro-life laws just lead to unsafe abortions, or pro-life laws are harming women. But I will say I do hear a lot on the scientific field. It's just very inconsistent answers because they don't have a consistent answer of when life begins. And so they'll come up and say, I hear this more and more regularly, that, it's not a baby, it's basically a parasite. And I'm like, oh, boy, here we go.
Yeah.
They can't give a consistent argument when it comes to the scientific front like they are with the policy implications, where they're all just spewing these talking points that they've heard online.
Right.
Whereas
this is because the pro-abortion movement has had to throw all the scientific facts and knowledge under the bus because it doesn't serve their purposes. When you get a study, when was that study done? It was 2,000 biologists, PhD biologists from all over the world, male and female. Most of them were pro-choice, or self-claimed that they were pro-choice. And 96% of them acknowledged that the beginning of a human being's life is the moment of fertilization. I think that was done in 2023, 2024.
Yeah,
so,
I quote that all the time.
Yep, you're absolutely right. They just ignore the science, but these young people think that they're speaking science because they're fed all these talking points.
Yes, absolutely. I do this. I say this every time at my tour stops. They'll come up and they'll give random answers, and they'll all have different answers of when life begins. And I'll ask them, okay, I want a single one of you to find me a biology textbook that says life begins at whatever they say, whether it's birth or viability. And I never, in my years of doing this, have had them do it. And there's always just this moment of silence where they have to sit and think, oh, maybe I'm not the side of science. And it's really powerful, honestly.
Yeah. What do you think are the arguments that they most like to debate? Is it the rape and incest? Is it life of the mother? Or does it go more into things like, a woman's autonomy, women's choice, women's value, women's dignity?
Yeah. I say I love to talk when I do have students come up that are extremely educated on the abortion issue, where they'll bring up the violinist argument. I do get really excited because I love getting into the philosophy. But no, I think sadly it's just this very surface-based knowledge where they're genuinely convinced that pro-life laws are harming women. So that's what they bring up the whole time, is women are dying in these specific cases the whole time.
So what frustrates you the most about the way that pro-choice young people view the pro-life movement? What kind of misconceptions do they have that you encounter a lot?
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious one is that they genuinely think pro-lifers want to control women and are trying to take away women's rights. And
we just call that the dumb argument, right?
Yes.
Just so dumb.
Oh, my goodness. But
why would I want to control you? What would I get out of it?
Right, exactly. I ask them all the time. I ask them, do you genuinely think I just really want to control women? And it's me standing there as a woman, and oftentimes it's a guy telling me this. And I'll say, yes, I do. And it's ridiculous. Wow. But no, I have to, I stand there and I explain all the resources we offer that Planned Parenthood does not offer. And my goal always in these conversations, I know sometimes I might not completely change their mind, but I always ask them, hey, did I at least get you to understand that the pro-life movement does care about women, that our resources like what Students for Life does with standingwithyou.org, that we are offering help for these women? Can I at least get you to understand that? And a lot of times, or even most of the time, I'm at least getting them to understand that we care about women and are helping them.
Yeah. Lydia, I think it would be fun if you engage in that violinist argument for just a minute. Not very long, but just a minute. We train at Healing the Culture, we train faculty members that we employ to go to college campuses and teach small groups of 10 to 15 pro-life leaders on the campus how to engage in dialogue and how to answer the hard questions, and using the life principles that we've generated. And a big question that always comes up with these kids is, how do we answer the violinist argument? So I'll lay it out, and I want to hear how you answer it. Yeah, for our listening audience, this argument goes this way. It says, so the unborn child, the woman doesn't have a responsibility to stay hooked up to this unborn child for 9 months of her life when she didn't want a baby in the first place, and you're expecting her to use her body to keep that baby alive for 9 months. That's no different than if you woke up one morning and discovered that somebody had kidnapped you and hooked you up to a famous violinist who has a rare blood disease, and he's going to die unless he receives a continual transfusion for 9 months, and you're the only person who has the kind of blood that he needs. And so you're hooked up, and if you unhook yourself, you're aborting him. That's no different than a woman aborting a baby. What would you do?
Yes, so it's obviously a very strange analogy that I sometimes get blank stares when they even say it, because they're like, what in the world is happening? But I mean, the very first thing is abortion is not unplugging yourself from a baby. It's intentionally killing them. It would be like going up to this violinist and stabbing them in the neck, because that's what abortion is. It's not a safe, I'm just going to separate the mother from the baby. It's an intentional killing because you don't want that person to be alive. And so I think that's first and foremost the most basic thing we can use to debunk it. But also there is a very different relationship between someone and a stranger versus a mother and her child. For example, if a mother is snowed in with her newborn baby and the options are either she breastfeeds the baby and essentially connects the baby to her body and gives up her bodily autonomy, or she lets the baby die or kills them, we would all say that she does have the obligation to, quote unquote, give up her bodily autonomy to sustain her newborn baby's life, because she's a parent and she has the obligation to her child. And so we would say the same for a child in the womb, that for those 9 months that we would ask her, we would support her, of course, but we would ask her to sustain that child and not kill them just because they're inconvenient. But there's a whole, I could go down that rabbit trail for a while, but those are a couple of answers.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, any mother who has a son, who requires a kidney transplant for survival, and she has a kidney that would work and she refuses to do so to save her own life, we would all look at that mother as a real schmuck, like, gosh, what's the matter with you? You have a relationship to this boy. This is your own child. But a person who wouldn't give up his kidney for somebody else that you don't even know, and you wake up one morning and somebody's forcing you to give your kidney up, we would all acknowledge you don't have a responsibility. There's not the same, the relationship is different. And I think another answer is the natural condition. It is a natural condition that the child, a woman's body is made, it's so obviously made to bear life, to give life, to nurture life, to conceive life, and to give birth to life. And that's the natural condition when this child is formed in your womb. This happens by nature. You being hooked up to a violinist overnight by being kidnapped one day is not by nature. So you don't have I tell the students on my campus, my uterus exists solely for a baby. It does not do anything good for me. If anything, it causes a lot of women pain. It's for a baby to sustain them. It's completely different. Yeah. As a Gen Z leader in the pro-life movement, how do you think your generation approaches this issue differently than older generations like my generation did?
Yeah, I think that Gen Z is very much direct and we're very blunt. We don't like to sugarcoat things. We're not as worried about hurting feelings, which unfortunately leads to me getting mass protested and screamed at and threatened sometimes. But it also means that my generation is willing and able to dive into these hard conversations. And they're more open to having them. They're not shying away from controversy. I think with what we're seeing with older generations and is that we have to kind of sugarcoat things for them, whereas with my generation, we go straight in. And I really like that they're able to come up to the mic. I've seen people that are completely opposed to everything I believe courageously come up to the mic and have conversations with me. They just line up. And it's really great to see that they're willing to have the open dialogue, and it's great, and I'm able to have honest conversations with them.
I think people listening in the older generations would say, but every older generation thinks that younger generations are more rebellious and more direct and more to the point. But I think this Gen Z generation is even more so because they've been able to hide behind the anonymity of social media. And so it's kind of trained their brains to be super direct, even to the point of rude, and maybe not listening to anybody else and just spewing it all out there. And that really does do something for you. I got to ask you, with all the abuse that you take, Lydia, what motivates you personally to keep doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I mean, the first and foremost thing is my generation is the primary demographic getting abortions. There was a viral statistic that came out that 28% of Gen Z has been aborted. And so I've had peers and friends that have been personally impacted by abortion, and it's devastating. Abortion is the leading cause of death in our world, and so we really have to keep fighting. And if we say that we would stood up for any other human rights abuse throughout history, we should be standing for life. And just seeing God work in the hearts and minds of young people, that there is an increase of pro-life young people that's been growing since Roe's reversal. It's been fantastic to see, and just getting to save babies and change hearts and minds is the best job I could ask for. Really.
Lydia, is there any hope about the next generation of pro-life advocates? What do you think they need to succeed?
Absolutely. I think that what you're talking about, that rebellious spirit, I think it can be Gen Z's strength, because right now the dominant pro-abortion culture is what's reigning our culture. And so if my generation can learn to rebel against that and to just learn the truth and stop believing those lies that it's women's rights in healthcare and they can see the truth, I think that my generation has the courage to stand up against the abortion industry. And we're already seeing it. Yeah. We just had 1,600 campus groups nationwide, and our students are so excited to fight for life.
Great. Lydia, if a student listening on a college campus right now wants to find out more about how they can get you to come to their college campus or another Students for Life of America advocate, where do they go? How do they find out?
Yeah, go to prolifegen.org and just scroll down. There's a bunch of different ways to get involved. You can request any of our speakers. You can host an activism event on your campus. We want everyone to get involved, whether you're a high school student or if you're a person who has retired. We want everyone involved in the fight for life. So please go to prolifegen.org and get involved with us today.
Wow. Okay. So Lydia Taylor Davis, you are our new hero. We will pray for your safety, but also for your success on the college campuses. I am grateful to you for your courageous and heroic witness, despite the sacrifice it costs you. As Father Tad and I were discussing in the earlier segment, that's what it takes to be a good pro-life leader, and that's what it takes to be a servant of Christ. God bless you. We hope that you have a successful tour after the Christmas break. And God, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's been great to talk to you.
And we will be right back after this break.
Stay with us. There's more Real Presence Live to come on the Real Presence Radio Network.